Okay, we're finally ready to write some code. So after all that buildup, we've done our prototyping, we've done our brainstorming. So now we're finally ready to start writing some code. Okay, so you're going to go to your Expo Snack account, make sure you sign in. And as soon as you sign in, you'll be presented with kind of a template code here. It gives you kind of a starter snack. Okay, now just some navigational hints. If you ever want to go back and see a list of all your projects, you go up here in the upper right corner where your profile is, profile pic in the upper right here. If I click on that, notice that there's an option that says My Snacks. If you go to that, that'll show you a list of all your projects. A snack, they call it a project, they call a snack. Okay, also don't forget that this editor, unlike REPL, does not auto-save your work. So you have to make sure that you save your snack periodically, frequently, periodically, preferably, so you don't lose any of your work. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead. It gives you kind of this weird kind of default name, kind of random default name for your snack. I'm going to go ahead and rename this. So I'm going to call this Snack 1. You can call yours whatever you want. Okay, so here's our snack. It gives us our kind of standard template code. This is just a basic template for if you wanna do a real basic snack. Now remember, the three parts of our program are the import section at the top, where you pull in outside code that other people have already written that you can use in your app without having to write everything yourself from scratch. Then in the middle, there's our main body of our program right there. There's the main part of our program. And then at the bottom is all the styling stuff. Okay, so we got the three sections. We got the imports, we got the main body, and then we got the styling. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything and delete. I'm going to start totally from scratch, totally blank slate. Okay, now when I do that, notice that I get some errors on the right-hand side here. This section on the right, remember this is a preview section. I get some errors here. It's red. It doesn't like that I deleted everything. That's okay, because it thinks that there's no program there to run, so it's getting upset. But as I start to write some code, then it'll start to resolve itself out. So let's not worry about that right now. Okay, so first thing in our program is the import section. Now, in every mobile application that we're going to write with React Native, there are certain mandatory imports that we have to import because it provides basic functionality without which our app is not going to run. Okay, so there's certain mandatory ones that we've got to do. Okay, so you're always going to have some stuff, at least a few things in your import section. One of those is called React. Okay, so let me write some code to pull it in. Now, when you're first learning a language, don't worry too much. Don't sweat all the small details. Pay attention to the big picture. The small details are kind of idiosyncratic things that just have to do with certain features of the language syntax. And as you work more and more with the language and you become more comfortable with it, those are going to become more familiar to you. Okay, so don't worry about, okay, why is this capitalized and this was not? Why are there quotation marks around this? Why is there a semicolon? Just understand that that's just how the language works, and that's just rules of the language. Okay, so the first one says import capital R React from single quote small r React, semicolon. Okay, so that'll pull in certain mandatory things from the basic React Native environment that we need in order for our app to run correctly. Okay, notice how the editor, like a lot of editors, it'll kind of color code some of the words, so it kind of gives us a clue when we're debugging, especially if the colors are off, then you know something's wrong. Okay, so that's one mandatory thing we've got to pull in. The other is we've got to pull in certain standard components. Now remember, the idea of a component is you have like an app or a web page. You divide it up, you chunk it up into small pieces, each of which just fulfills one basic job. Those are called components. And so there are certain standard ones that every app pretty much has to have. Like every app is going to have like pages, different pages. Every app is going to have probably some text or maybe some images. So there's certain standard components that we got to pull in that will allow us to be able to handle those basic things that every app is pretty much going to have. Okay, so we got to pull those in next. So I'm going to write another import statement. Okay, this one is going to have some curly braces. And I'm going to pull in two components that are pretty much, every app pretty much has to have these. There's one called a view component, and there's another called a text component. And as the text component, the name implies, it handles text. If you want to put some text on the screen, you need a text component. And a view basically is like a container. So every separate page of your app, every separate screen of your app is contained inside a separate view. So we need that. Okay, and I'm going to import them from React-Native. Okay, so that'll pull in some basic mandatory components that we're going to need to use. Again, don't worry too much about the details. Don't worry about, well, why does the second one have the curly braces when the first one doesn't? Why is there single quotes around the second part? Why is there a semicolon? That's just all just features of the language. So there's our import statements. Now we're going to write the main body of our app. And that's always going to be contained in a function. We learned about the basic idea of functions back in Python. Function is just a handy way of breaking code up into small modules so that you can reuse it in different places and you don't have to rewrite the same code over and over. And so we're gonna break up our app into functions. So each screen is going to be like a different function. And so all these different organizational blocks that we break our app up into, components and functions. So the main part of our app is going to be inside a function. Okay, so I'm going to write it like this. Export default function. The name of my function is going to be capital A app. There are no parameters or little bits of extra information I need to give it in order for it to do its job. So I just put an empty set of parentheses. And then I put a curly brace. Okay, so here's a template for what our main body of our app is going to look like, the function that makes up the main body of our app. Export default function, the name of the function is app, and that's always going to be the same. So the entry point of your app, the first screen, whenever you launch the app, whatever appears first when you launch it, is in a function called app, capital A app. Okay, so inside the function, we're going to write, basically here's where we're going to write the code that's going to actually lay out stuff on the screen. It's going to be where we put up the text, we put up the images, whatever we want to put up. This is sort of like the body section. Remember the body section from our HTML websites? The body section is where you put all the content of the website. That's where all the text and the images, all the code to pull those in, that's where that goes. And so in React Native, it's inside the body of the app function. That's where all that code goes to put up all the content. Okay, now I'm going to put one more layer here. I'm going to put a return statement with a set of parentheses and a semicolon right there at the end. Okay, so what does that do? Well, return is just a command that says, okay, here's some results of my app. I'm going to kick it back to the mobile device, and now the mobile device is going to put it up. Okay, so whatever we want to lay out, the content of our app goes inside that return statement. Okay, so that's always going to be the same there too. So you have the function app, which is the opening screen, and inside that function you have a return statement, which is going to kick back all the stuff back to the mobile device. Okay, so here's now we're at the level where we can actually start to lay out the content of our app. Okay, so we're going to start by putting everything inside a view component. Okay, so this is where it's going to look a lot like HTML. We have opening and closing tags, and notice the closing tag has that extra slash in it after the opening angle bracket. Okay, so that's in the view component. Notice also that the capitalization, those details like capitalization, remember that's important. So we're going to put everything inside a view component. It's like a container. So every separate screen of our app is going to be in a separate view, and that's just like a holding container. Now notice, interesting enough, now that I set that up, finally when I set up all this stuff, then the emulator, the preview on the right here, all of a sudden those errors are gone, and now it's just white. So we got a blank canvas ahead of us. So now we're kind of at the level where we've got a functioning app. There's nothing there. It's not displaying any content, but at least now we have a functioning app. Okay, so we know we're on the right track. We know we're making some progress here. Okay, so what do we want to put in our app? Well, let's just put some text. Okay, so inside the view component, I'm going to put a text component. A text component is used whenever, as the name implies, whenever you want to put some text or some words and things on the screen. I'm going to put a text component. Okay, so what shall we say? Well, let's put our kind of the standard computer science, whenever you write a first program, typically it's a hello world program. It's a program that just prints out hello world to the screen. So let's just put hello world in the text component. Now let's look over here on the right, in the emulator, the simulator here on the right, the previewer. Notice now we have, there's our text. If you look all the way in the upper right hand corner, there's our upper left hand corner, excuse me, there's our text. There's our hello world. Hey, not real impressive as far as functionality, but hey, we're there. We got an app that works now. So you could, if you wanted to run this in the Expo Go app on your phone or your mobile device, you could see it there. If you wanted to preview it directly on your device, you could do that. You'd see Hello World in the upper left corner of your screen. Okay, so pretty neat. So there we are. So there's our first app. Now we're not going to add any styling yet. We're going to save that for another video. I want to just show you just the real basics. If we want to write just a real minimal app, how that works. Okay, so we got our imports at the top. These are pretty much required. Pretty much every app you're going to see these. You import React from React, so you import the basic functionality of JavaScript that we need in order for our app to run. Then we import some components that we're going to use, text and view. And then here's our main body of our app, which is a function. And then inside the function, there's a return statement, which returns the content back to the mobile device so it can show it. And then inside that return statement, then there's all the stuff. So it looks like HTML. It's kind of like the body section of your HTML website. We got a view component, which is a container. Pretty much every separate screen of your app is going to have inside a view component. And then inside the view component, that's where you can put out whatever you want. And in this case, all we did is put some text, hello world, and we see it up here on the left here. Okay, so there's our first app. First app, congratulations. So now we're well on our way to being able to write what you actually envision. Okay, so in the next video, I'm going to show you the third part, which is how to do some styling. But for now, that should get us off to a good start.